Welcome back. Thanks for coming back. Today, I want to talk about Trevor Bauer. That's where I want to start. And I know people are like wondering who, and there are some people that know him, but regardless. And before I get into him, pause. Think about that before I get into him. Anyway, I want to be clear about something. When I reference a story or a celebrity or anything like that, it's not about them. You know, it's basically I use them as a conduit to get to a larger point. And well, I shouldn't even say larger point now that I'm thinking about it, because the point might not be larger, but it's my ultimate point. So in the past, when I referenced like Venus Williams in the last episode, it had very little to nothing to do about her. But in reading what I read about her, it made me think about other things, and those other things are what I want to talk about more so than talking about her. Don't really care about talking about her at all, because for people that listen to the whole episode about Venus Williams, you realize that it really didn't have much or anything to do about Venus Williams. It's just that she was the person that led me down that road. And the same goes with like the Blair Underwoods or Malik Yobas or any of those cats. And that's pretty much the way that my thought process goes. So it's like, if I read an article, forget if it's a celebrity involved or anything like that. If I read an article, it might start here, and then I'll start thinking about this because of this, even though it might not have had anything to do with the original person or the original article that I read. So I say all that to say, keep that in mind as I'm talking about Trevor Bauer. And let me also say, before I continue, that this is it's a serious point. It's a serious topic that I'm going to talk about, which is going to lead to a larger topic, which isn't so serious. So I'm going through a dark place to get to a place where I really want to get to, which is more lighthearted and things like that. And I don't even know if that makes any sense, but keep listening and let me know. But anyway, let me start off by saying this for people. Well, I already started, but let me say this for people that don't know: Trevor Bauer is a pitcher for the LA Dodgers. And it's also worth noting, for the purposes of this episode, that he is considered to be one of the more, let's call him, eccentric players in baseball. And as most people would say, the difference between eccentric and crazy is the amount of money that you have. And he has enough money. He's a millionaire, multimillionaire. So we will say that he is eccentric. He is in that 1% class. If he were broke, his action based on his actions, people would see him as crazy. So that's worth noting, and we'll refer to that later. So basically, Trevor Bauer, the pitcher, there was a woman that Trevor did not know, just some random chick that posted something on Instagram, and she tagged him in the Instagram post. Now, I don't know how the woman looks, and I'll get into why I don't know how she looks. I'll get into that later as well. But it's safe to say that she was very attractive. And on a side note, going back to the last episode, while a woman is can be in the top 1% of income earners, and she'd be thinking about finding somebody on her financial quote unquote level, this kind of shows that a guy who's in that 1% class could not care about that at all, which opens him up to having more options because he's not looking for someone on his quote unquote level, whether it be financial or anything else. Well, I guess maybe his attractive level. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But Trevor Bauer didn't care about how much money she had or anything like that, because when Trevor Bauer, he saw that he had been tagged in this Instagram post, he, as the kids would say, slid into her DMs and hit her up. So they had an exchange, and the way some of these things go when a celebrity slides into the DMs of someone on Instagram, it usually leads to sex. And that's where this was leading. So before I continue, let me just say, okay, hold on. Now, this is where, like I said, we're going to go through the dark parts to get to the lighter parts. This is where the dark parts start. And trust me, there's a point to all of this, and it's not about what you might think it will be when I get to the point. So why don't I just get to the point? But during the interaction, the sexual encounter. He choked her unconscious during the act of sex, and basically, make a long story short, he beat the shit out of her. Okay. So, when reading that, when hearing me talk about that, for those of you that hadn't read about this, you're probably thinking to yourself, that's an open and shut case. That's what I was thinking. This is an open and shut case. So, why am I spending 30 minutes talking about this? And the reason is because it's not as simple as that. In this day and age, it rarely ever is. And if it were that simple, I wouldn't be talking about it, basically. But here's where it starts to get complicated. And this is not going in the way that some of you might think either, because because usually when somebody says it's more complicated, it usually leads down a path of victim shaming or something like that, and that is definitely not what I'm doing. But it is interesting. Um, excuse me. When she woke up, dude was there. Trevor was there, essentially playing the role of like the dutiful boyfriend. Like he was just oblivious to what had happened, the things that he'd actually done to this woman. So he's sitting there telling her it's okay, I'm here, everything's fine and all of that when she wakes up. Okay, that's one. Here's where it gets even more complicated, because that first part, while I said it was complicated, I guess it might not really be all that complicated for a guy to assault a woman and be oblivious to what he's done. I've actually heard of that happening before. So while I said that was complicated, maybe that's not complicated. But here's where it gets more complicated, if that wasn't enough. They set up a meeting for a month later. So after that happened, they continue communicating with each other, and they set up a meeting to have another sexual encounter, like I said, a month later. So in that second encounter, he pretty much did the same thing to her, if not worse. So after that second time, she actually went to the police to get a restraining order against him. And even though she didn't go to the police to press any charges of any kind, it was just about getting the restraining order. When the police saw her condition, and her condition was having like two black eyes and a busted lip, amongst other things, the police were like, whoa, we are not just going to just let this go and give you a restraining order. So that opened up an investigation, and now this is being treated as a possible rape case, and it's ongoing. So, I wish I could give you the results of it, but the results of it aren't really even the point either. So, Trevor Bauer, obviously, because he is the defendant in this case, he gets wind of it, and he decides to go public. And when I say go public, he, okay. Now, let me just say before I get there, I lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. But let me just say that, going back to when I said that I would explain later that I didn't know what she looked like. This is the reason. It's because she's being treated as the victim in a rape investigation. So that's why I don't know what she looks like. But the fact that he got with her just based off of being tagged, that's what led me to believe that she must be attractive in one way, shape, or form, at least to him. So Trevor Bauer, going back to him finding out, Trevor Bauer, the eccentric one, as we discussed earlier, he released text messages, screenshots of text messages between the two, between the first and second incidents. Now, those text messages, they included exchanges where she was telling him the results of her first hospital visit. He was checking in to see how she was and how the hospital visit went. So obviously, I guess he did know what he'd done to her. They did discuss her going to the hospital. He was checking in to see how the hospital visit went. And she was talking about how, the doctor said everything was fine, that the swelling would go down in a couple weeks or whatever. And the ringing in her ears would subside eventually, whenever. So That's the tone of the text messages that were going back and forth. So that's one part of it. He's checking on her. I guess not the biggest deal. Doesn't mean he did anything wrong. But this is where it gets even more weird because in those text exchanges, she's expressing how much she enjoyed it. Not only how much she enjoyed it, and this is not with him prompting, this is her just talking, just volunteering how much she enjoyed it and how much she was looking forward to it the next time that they got together. Okay. Okay. Now you see, hopefully you all are starting to see how this is getting more and more complicated and why, I thought to talk about it now. So she also talked about how much she enjoyed being choked, specifically being choked unconscious, and how much it turned her on out as she was blacking out, the more turned on that she was getting. So there was more to it than that. And even the pain stuff, she was talking about how much she enjoyed the physical pain that he had inflicted on her and how much she was looking forward to more. So as you read through these text messages, as I read through these text messages, the question, at least for me, was, is this a rape? Does this sound like a rape? Or does it sound like somebody who forgot what the safe word was? But I guess if you're unconscious, you don't really, it really doesn't matter if you know what the safe word is or not. If you unconscious, you can't use it. So with all of that said, I guess obligated to say that, all of this is alleged. And even though I've read like many articles and saw the text exchange messages for myself, still, because I was not in the room, I do not know any of these people. I've never met any of these people. I cannot say for certain that anything is true. What he's saying is true. The text messages could have been doctored. What she's saying is true. Maybe she did want it. I have to say it was all alleged. And let me just say, I don't definitely don't want this to be seen as victim shaming or victim blaming because regardless of what happened or whatever, how much she might have been interested or whatever, there is a point where there is a line, the pineapple safe word. And I don't know why pineapple is the safe word, the universal safe word for everyone. But yeah, there is a point where even if you do like a certain thing, it can go too far and it can cross over into an area where it just shouldn't go. And I would imagine that if she filed a restraining order against him after the second time, and this is definitely me just guessing, that after the first time they might have had a conversation, even despite the text messages where she was talking about where she loved it, maybe she was like, all right, yo, that was cool. I'm gonna give you a pass on that one, but that went a little bit too far. Maybe this time we can be rough, but maybe it doesn't have to be that bad where, I don't have to go to the hospital. I can see that conversation taking place. But if she's unconscious again, which she's saying that she was, the second time he choked her unconscious again, then it's like, I guess while he was in the course of finishing his duties or whatever, he just got into it and wanted to beat her up some more. Either way, just talking about this stuff is just so strange. But the point is, I don't want it to come across like I'm blaming the victim. And to add to that, like I said, I've followed Trevor's career since he was a rookie. He pitched for my favorite team, so I feel pretty comfortable labeling him as eccentric, i.e., crazy. Now, not because of anything like this that I've heard or read about. No, this is a first, but he has a long list of strange behaviors that he's exhibited since he's been in Major League Baseball that would lead you to come to the conclusion that he is a different type of dude. He's definitely a different type of thinker. So it's worth bringing that up. But with that said, even with all of his eccentricities and all of that, just like I don't want to blame her um, for however she wound up in that situation, I also don't want to be quick to judge him as a rapist either. That is way above my pay grade, and I will let the authorities handle that and come to whatever conclusion that they come to. But so that's that for that. But the reason that this story intrigued me so much is because it made me think about how sex is viewed by people. Again, like I said earlier, it's not even about that case. It's just where it led my mind to think after hearing and researching that case. It's like in the Father's Day episode, it's like I talked about my brother's sex advice, the advice that he gave to me before I'd had sex, which was basically, excuse me, to recap for people that either didn't listen to it or just don't remember what he was saying. He was basically saying there's a time for love making, and then there's a time to blow a chick's back out. And the majority of the time, blowing the chick's back out is the better option. And he wasn't saying that on some macho stuff because I've learned later on in life since I started having sex that he was saying that because that's what women respond to the majority of the time. Now, with that said, I'm speaking from my own experiences. And I know that I'm talking about what women like, considering I'm not a woman. And I understand that that's not fair. I'm well aware of that. And I'm sure that there are some women that might disagree. There are some women that might like to be made love to and might not like more aggressive sex, the quote unquote blowing the back out or whatever. But I have to, before anybody judges my brother, I also have to say that he did tell me that I needed to read the room and know the person, know my personnel, which basically means that you don't assume, you have to adjust according to what's appropriate to the person that you're with. And also, the point is there's a point to be made that you, what somebody might want the majority of the time might not be what the person wants all of the time. It's like sometimes somebody just wants to be made love to. And there are times when they want their backs blown out. It just seems like, from my experience, the majority of the time, like I said before, blowing the back out is the better way to go. And let me just say this before I'm continuing down this path. I'm off Trevor Bauer. I'm off the accuser now, if you all hadn't figured it out. So anything that I say now, from this point going forward, I don't want it to be taken as me making any kind of judgment or anything about Trevor Bauer or about the woman that he's being accused of having raped. So yeah, I'm off that. Um, but like I said before, he's just the dude that led me down this path to this thinking. So anyway, now that that disclaimer is out of the way, as I think about sex, I think about how it's changed, like from my early days when I was younger and more inexperienced to now where I am older and more experienced. And one thing I can say is that as I've gotten older, sex has routinely gotten more aggressive to the point where like love making, quote unquote, and I keep saying quote unquote, love making is like mocked. It's like I remember watching the show Married at First Sight, which if you don't watch it, I don't know that it's worth recommending, even though I enjoy watching it. But I won't even go into what the premise is. I've mentioned it before in this podcast. But in one of the seasons, one of the couples, excuse me, one of the wives described her husband's lovemaking as quote unquote basic Caucasian sex. And that is like a phrase that is used now all the time to talk about boring sex. And when she used it in the context of her man wasn't putting it down. He wasn't blowing her back out. So that's funny, at least to me. And I've had conversations with quite a few women that describes great sex as including some level of pain. Yeah. I've had women ask me to choke them. And in the interest of full disclosure, I had no problem obliging them. Now, with that said, nobody's asked me to choke them unconscious. And it is kind of weird, again, in the interest of full disclosure, when you do choke a woman and she starts gagging and stuff like that. It's like, whoa. Yeah. So it's always that line that you want to like tread, but enough about choking. But I've never choked anybody unconscious. No one's ever asked me to choke them unconscious. And I've also had women that ask me to hit them in various places that go beyond just like your typical smacking them on the ass and stuff like that. But with that said, I've never come across anybody that wanted me to black their eyes and bust their lip. Yeah, so yeah, so that's a bit extreme. So basically, no one's asked me to choke them unconscious, and no one's asked me to punch them in the eye so hard that their eyes are black. Actually, no one's ever asked me to punch them in the eyes, punch them in the eye. Period, whether I black their eyes or not. Anyway, so I guess my point in all of this is when you look at sex in this day and age, where people are more aggressive during sex, are those things choking somebody into their unconscious, blacking the eye, busting the lip? Are those things really far fetched? You know? I mean, and if they are too far fetched for you, can you not see a group of people that would enjoy something like that? Again, this has nothing to do with Trevor Bauer and his victim or his alleged victim. This is just me thinking out loud. Like I said before, it's just interesting how people view sex and what is too much. Where's the line? Where's that pineapple point where you have to use a safe word? It's like, again, talking about myself, I went on a date with a woman that was into BDSM, the bondage, domination, sadomasochism, whatever you want to call it. I forget what the acronym means, but went out with a woman and she was into that. And she was into some interesting things that I had never thought of. I think I might have mentioned this one time when I was having a conversation with Reggie on one of the episodes when I was just like, it became the more I talked to her, less about sex. And I felt like I was in grade school. I was just fascinated by some of the things that she was telling me. Now, with that said, I don't think of myself as a prude, and I don't want any of you to think of me as a prude. Actually, I don't really care what you think of me, to be honest. But I don't think of myself as a prude. As a matter of fact, I think of myself as being exceptionally open-minded. And down the road, I'm going to have an episode where I focus on how norms have changed and what people are into, which I'm all for. But with that said, everybody has a line. Everybody has a pineapple. That safe word. And again, that is if you're conscious enough to use it. Anyway, I'm open minded as the next person and probably even more. But it's creepy to me when somebody tells you that they want them to that they want you to rape them. And basically, the reason I bring that up is because again, talking about me and my experiences, I remember I dated a woman once that she wanted me to simulate raping her. That was her thing. That was the deepest experience that I had ever had. So it was weird to think about raping someone or simulating rape with someone that you were already having consensual sex with, but me being the nice boyfriend that I was, the open minded one, I wanted to please my woman. So I agreed to give it a shot. And just to put it mildly, it was a mess. It didn't go well at all because I didn't realize how seriously she wanted me to take it. And I didn't realize how serious she was about it. Like, she was literally like screaming and like fighting me like it was real. And I'm just like, the whole time, like, shut the fuck up. And not saying shut the fuck up like part of the role play experiment. I'm saying shut the fuck up. Like you have neighbors and you are loud to the point that they might hear you. It was almost like I was being set up. It was like one of those movies where somebody has rough sex or something like that, and then the next morning she winds up dead, and the police come to you, and it's like, and I'm like, oh, we were just role playing, and like, yeah, okay, why was she beat up and tied up and all of this stuff, and now she's dead? So with that in the back of my mind, I just wasn't on that mess. So long story short, she was all annoyed and stuff because I wasn't aggressive enough when trying to like quote unquote rape her. And in this case, I was trying to tie her up. And I remember telling her, it's like, yo, with the way that you were fighting, the only way that I could have tied you up would have been to knock your ass out. And I'm telling you, weird. She just like shrugged her shoulders as if to be like, and I, yo, don't get me wrong, y'all. I'm all about aggression, but I kind of draw the line when it comes to having to beat the shit out of my girlfriend, and beat her unconscious to complete a like requested sex act. I mean, hey, call me a prude on that one. I'll wear that because that mess just goes a little bit further than I would want to go. But it does make me wonder though, like if a guy's is willing to go that extra mile, what does that say about him? So going back to Trevor Bauer, even though this isn't about Trevor Bauer, if the sex he had with the woman was consensual and he did that, what does that say about him? Like, what does it say about someone that would black a woman's eyes, bust her lip, he scratched her face up, even if she wanted him to? What does that say about him? And like, and what would it say about the guy that consents to quote unquote rape his girlfriend as part of some kind of like demented role play? Now, let me clarify when I say rape and stuff like that, she literally used the word rape. But to me, that's different from like the type of role play where she's playing hard to get and stuff like that. And, you know, you got to be a little bit more, that's different. But consider she used the word rape and was fighting me physically. Yeah, that's on a different level than your standard role play. And then what does it say about the woman that wants to be raped in some kind of demented role play? And and it's funny when thinking about these things and talking to friends about it, the first thing that a person would want to do is look into that person's past and make some determination about some kind of weird trauma that they might have experienced when they were younger, and that's the reason that they like overly aggressive sex and wants to be dominated in that way and all of that stuff. And I, I don't know. It's just funny how when somebody doesn't necessarily agree with when somebody does something that isn't necessarily agreeable to us, in this case, wild and overly aggressive sex, we always want to dig into their childhood as if something bad must have happened to them. It might be the case, but sometimes it's not. It's like maybe they just plain old freaks on a level that's higher than you or me can comprehend. And it's always funny, like the different levels and stuff like that. I remember a woman that I dated, and we were having a conversation about sex positions, and she said that her favorite sex position was doggy style. And then she went into this long explanation about how that's what it is, but she's almost ashamed to say that that's what it is because saying that it is, you know, might demean her as a woman because the whole idea of being built bent over in front of a man, when a woman, especially in this day and age where women are taught to be, independent and all of this stuff, how to let a man dominate them like that. And I'm just like, man, you looking way too deeply into that. And maybe when looking at like violence and sex, maybe we're looking too deep into that. But I don't know. I don't know. But again, that's just talking about violent acts, when talking about sex. But there are also like so many other things sexually that go way beyond the bounds of normal and stuff like that. You, you know, shoot, I know, like people like to be peed on, for example. People are turned off when having sex during the time of the month. That turns some people on. You know, People have so many different things, and it's so interesting to me to it's so interesting to me to think and to talk to people and to know what their turn-ons are, what they like, how aggressive they like it, um, maybe what they've gone through that may lead them to think in the way that they think and things like that. And again, this isn't me judging one way or another. You like what you like, and that has absolutely nothing to do with me. Hey, as long as you find a willing partner to do what you need to do, it's just funny to me how most people will talk about how most people will talk about wanting good back breaking sex, but everybody's definition of good back breaking sex is different. And what I'm finding is that definition evolves, and it definitely seems to have evolved as I've gotten older. Man, these older women out here are freaks. Way more than these younger women out here, and way more than I ever thought they'd be when I was younger. I just think the impression that I had of women in their 40s and 50s when I was like in my 20s and 30s is nothing um compared to what it actually turned out to be when I got into my 40s and now I'm 50. Boy, these women trying to get it in, and I am thankful for that. But with that said, thankful or not, I'm not blacking anybody's eyes. Whether you ask me to or not, there's a line, and even if you won't use pineapple when asking for it, I'll use the word pineapple before I even do it. That's what my line is. So that's that for that. Thank you all for listening. As always, email me with your comments, as always, at michael@datingwhileadulting.com. Go to datingwhileadulting.com to see everything that you need to see. You can watch the video. You can go to YouTube and watch the video. Please download this. And I hadn't said this in a while. Tell 50 friends to tell 50 friends. And yeah, let me know what you think. Um, and on that note, Reggie, say goodbye. Reggie didn't say anything, so I'll say goodbye for him. You can hit my music. Well, actually, the music is already playing. So hope everybody had a nice 4th of July, whatever. Anyway, bye.